the power of the vision. So this idea of being a mystic is about having an intimate connection with spirit, having a two-way communication where you are speaking to it and it is speaking to you, where I speak with it, it speaks with me. In the teachings of Ernest Holmes, our founder, this idea of mysticism is deeply rooted in all of our spiritual principles, but it's supported by some really practical tools, some really deep, meaningful tools that help us be in contact with that indwelling presence, that eternal love that is residing right at the heart of each and every one of us. This idea of mysticism emphasizes the interconnectedness of all life and the power of engaging in these spiritual practices. So I think I used this one last week too, but this is how Ernest defines a mystic. He said, a mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and without mental process arrives at spiritual realization. Mysticism is that conscious experience and awareness of the divine presence within ourselves, within the universe. It's the awareness that it's not only inside of me, but it's inside of every other person, every other being, every other piece of creation. But this idea of mysticism emphasizes a direct and personal and intuitive connection with spirit, with that universe, with that energy, with that intelligence. This connection transcends our human intellect. It is beyond words and thoughts. It's beyond our traditional understanding of it. It's beyond the understanding of most traditional religions. It is an idea of cultivating a deep personal relationship where when we are seeking spiritual guidance, when we are seeking that connection with that being that we know exists out there, but we somehow are feeling like it's not around us right now, we can actually go into our spiritual practices and connect with spirit. So the visioning process is a transformative spiritual practice. It was developed by Michael Bernard Beckwith, who was a graduate of the same ministerial school I went to, Holmes Institute. He was a Science of Mind minister for many, many years, and he broke off in the late 80s and formed his own organization called Agape International, which very large center in Southern California. He used this process when he was forming his own organization, his own church. He used this process to get intuitive guidance from spirit. And this process invites us to move beyond our traditional ideas of goal setting or visualization and get into a state of understanding that maybe I don't have the perfect idea for what something is. Maybe there's an idea that's even better than what I can think of. You may have heard the saying, we add it oftentimes to our prayers, this and something more. Visioning allows us to get to that something more. Visioning allows us to tap into an intuition, a feeling, a sense, an idea that has never ever crossed our mind before. And it comes to us in all kinds of different ways. Visioning was developed long after Ernest Holmes passed away. Ernest died in 1960, and as I said, Michael Beckwith developed his visioning process in the early 80s. But Ernest spoke about visioning. He spoke about having a vision. He says, as we bring ourselves into greater vision than the range of our present concepts, we can induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our own experience. When we get closer to spirit, when we seek the guidance of spirit, we are able to create something that's beyond what we could even have imagined in the first place. When Michael Beckwith was doing his visioning process, they kept coming up with this, people would see a tree, is what they said. They would see a tree, and people would start to describe the tree, and the descriptions were very much the same. And when they found their first building to host their new center, it happened to be a building that had a courtyard in the middle of it. And right in the middle of that courtyard was that tree. the tree that they had all been seeing in their vision. Well, that was really great, but they soon outgrew that and had to go back into the visioning process and vision again for something even grander than what they had experienced before. And the next time they saw this like warehouse with these huge tall ceilings in it. And eventually they moved out. I attended their center a couple of times when it was in this huge warehouse. The ceilings must have been 20 feet tall. It was unbelievable, the size of it. But it was the same thing. It came through this visioning process. The people couldn't, they could have created it in their own mind through a lot of struggle and so forth, but this came intuitively. This was like, whoa, who ever thought of that? You know, we normally would think, oh, we need to be in a church building. This was a huge warehouse in a industrial park that they had their building in. So visioning is different than visualization. Visualization is a process where we have an idea in our mind, and we want to bring that idea into our experience. And so sometimes we will do things like outline, list everything about that idea that we want, all of the necessary requirements. You may have done this when you were looking for a life partner, and you said, oh, they have to have this, 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 and this, and they can't have this, 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 and this. It's often interesting to see which list is longer. Ernest says this is his definition of visioning from the Science of Mind textbook. The definition of visualization from the Science of Mind textbook. The art of mentally projecting a thought form into the universal creative medium. Visualizing means mentally seeing the things that you wish to have or to do. So it's creating that perfect image in our mind. It's a great practice, and we do it oftentimes when we are sitting down to do things. Sometimes when I can't get to the root of something, I will do some visualization about it because I need to go back to a little more concrete basics in there. And so I will go back to visualization to try to help me figure out exactly what it is I want to bring into my life. This is probably one of my favorite quotes from Ernest Holmes. This again comes from the Science of Mind textbook. He says, this is about visualization. He said, this is one way, and it's good if we know no better. It's good as far as it goes, and there are people to whom this seems to be an excellent approach. Our only comment about it is that it's a form of limitation. I get some idea in my mind. I think this is what it should be. Am I open to possibilities of it being different than that? Sometimes we get stuck on this idea. I remember once hearing someone talking about treatment, and they said that if you want a new car, you need to outline every single thing you want in that car. It needs to be the color orange. That happens to be my preference. It needs to be the color orange. It needs to have leather seats. It needs to have air conditioning. It needs to be a power steering. It needs to have an automatic transmission. It needs. And then you go to the dealership, and you buy this car that's perfect for you. And then you get home and you realize, man, I needed more trunk space. But I hadn't thought of that in the first place. Or, oh, geez, I wish I'd have gotten 4 doors instead of 2 doors because it's hard to get in the back seats. But if we open ourselves up to a grand idea of what's possible for me, then when we go to the dealership, the right and perfect car is going to appear for us there. Because we have opened up to Spirit, allowing it to create something beyond what our mental capacity to imagine is. So visioning process is about getting quiet, and it's about deep listening. Spirit is inside of us. It is all around us. It is moving through us all the time. And it is always, always, always looking for an outlet to bring itself forth into more and more expression in our lives and the world around us. So the first thing we need to do is to go into the silence. Because as long as we've got a lot of mental chattering and the noise around us and things like that, we're not able to hear that still small voice. The first time I heard that voice, and I knew beyond any intellectual knowledge whatsoever that was the voice of Spirit, was at a time when I was under great distress. My older brother had been diagnosed with a glioblastoma, which is a pretty nasty brain tumor. and he was nearing the end. And I was at work, and I couldn't function. I was trying to do my job, and I just couldn't function. It was just like I had this funny body sensation, and I was all this, and I was a computer specialist at an elementary school, and I had a lot of freedom to move around and do what I needed to do because I wasn't contained in a classroom. But I did not think I could go to my principal and say, I got this funny body sensation, I need to go home. It just didn't feel like I was going to be able to do that. So I thought, all right, I'm just going to go in my office and I'm just going to turn off the lights, close the door, and sit there until it goes away. And that's exactly what I did. Turned off my lights, shut my door, sat down in my chair, and said, okay, God, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to sit here until it's gone. And very, very quickly, I heard, there is no pain, there is no suffering, there's only peace. And I knew at that moment, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that that was the voice of Spirit. I was later talking to a friend about this and telling her about this experience, and she said to me, well, what did God sound like? And I said, well, it sounded like me. What else could it be? The presence of God is in us. It is that indwelling presence. It is moving through us. It's showing up as us. Of course it's going to sound like us. Of course it's going to reveal things in a way that we can hear it. Now, sometimes when we hear that, we hear it in lots of different ways. I heard those words in my head, in my own voice, saying them to me. But sometimes when I'm envisioning and I've asked a question, I actually don't hear a word. A thought just downloads. All of a sudden, maybe I'm looking out at a green meadow. I have a tendency to get buffalo a lot. I'm not really sure why, but I get a lot of buffalo in my visions. I get tingling in my body. You know, sometimes all of a sudden it's like, why is my elbow tingling? There should not be any reason for that. Or I will get like a chill. You know, that chill that runs down your back when what they used to say, someone walked over your grave. My grandmother would have said. The other thing I get a lot of is I get smells. All of a sudden I smell lemon or cinnamon. Those are my two go-to ones all the time. So Spirit speaks to us in ways that we in that moment can perceive. And sometimes it's a word that comes to our mind. Sometimes it's an image. Sometimes it's a thought. We get a lot of music also, right, Justin? We used to have a playlist of visioning songs. What was that one? Dinah, don't you blow your horn, right? That was the one that kept coming through a lot. Or Dinah, won't you blow, right? What is it? Well, yeah, Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Yeah, that's it, yeah. Anyway, it can come through in lots of different ways, but we have a problem with that, is that we tend to want to figure that out. Like, why am I hearing this crazy song? Why do I smell cinnamon? Why am I seeing a buffalo? When I first started doing visioning, I would go home, as soon as I've done the visioning, I'd go home and I'd Google, what's the metaphysical meaning of a buffalo? But that's not the point of it. It had nothing to do with the visioning that we were talking about. That's an intellectual activity. Me trying to figure that out is me going back into that visualization, trying to make something happen. It is not about that. It is about listening and seeing. Sometimes when a buffalo shows up, it means that there's an opportunity for something strong or powerful, to stand firm. I mean, you can imagine all of the things that a buffalo would represent. Maybe it's about bringing back the past that was gone for so many years. I don't have to figure it out in visioning. I just have to be open to it. When Michael Beckwith's group was visioning, they didn't try to figure out why they kept seeing a tree. They just accepted they were all seeing a tree, and that was fine. So we don't have to try to figure out what it is that we're seeing or why we're seeing that. This is also, again, from the Science of Mind. Remember, this was written about 50 years before Michael Beckwith did his visioning process. And Ernest says this, our eyes do not see visions and our ears do not hear sounds. The silence of is our communion with Spirit, our awareness of our unity with the One, our understanding that it is the Father within that doeth the works. The person who goes deeply into his or her own nature will find God speaks in a language more subtle than any human language. It's without tongue. It's actually without thought. In a universal language of spiritual emotion. It's a rather long quote. Which is instinctively in humanity and held in common by all civilizations, all creations, by all people who have lived. The universal language of emotion, sense, feeling, intuition, and instinct. Sometimes we call this conscious. Sometimes we call this a hunch. Sometimes we call it a vision, a dream. It makes no difference what we call it. It is the direct revelation of the omniscience through us. And that's what mysticism is about. The direct revelation of Spirit, pouring itself forth into expression through us. And so visioning is a practice where we allow that to happen. We set aside our preconceived ideas and notions about how something should be, how we should receive it. If I went into every visioning thinking, I got to hear the words, like I heard that first time, then I'm going to be sorely disappointed because Spirit might not be speaking to me that way that day. Spirit might be speaking to me through tingles in my body, or smells, or sounds, or music. Our task in visioning is to be open to receiving all of that. Be open to allowing Spirit to express itself. It's about seeking intuitive guidance. And so whenever we enter into any kind of project here, to do this theme for 2024, we did about 15 visioning sessions with over 30 people, asking these questions, asking and opening ourselves up to Spirit's intuition to move through us. So visioning is not about forcing anything to happen. It's not about trying to make something happen. It's about being open and receptive to whatever is available. We believe in our creative process, our science of mind symbol back here, that the perfect idea already exists in the mind of God. The perfect idea for every single thing, for your life, for your job, for your relationship, for your health. The perfect idea of that is already existing in the mind of the One. And so visioning is about opening ourselves up to receive the information that we need about how to make that happen in our lives, how to bring that in, how to look for those things that might lead us to a greater expression of whatever it is that we're dealing with. It's about being open to it, not going into it with preconceived ideas and notions about how it should be, but opening ourselves up to what Spirit is wanting to reveal through us. Spiritual visioning is used in all kinds of spiritual settings. It's also used in businesses. I have friends that are teaching it to their colleagues in workplaces. They take a lot of the words about Spirit and God and things like that out of it, but they still open up. There's a universal intelligence that's out there available to us. Let's tap into it. Let's tap into it and see what's available. It doesn't have to be a religious activity. This is a universal activity that transcends any religious teachings. But it is one where we open ourselves up to that intuitive guidance. And by attuning to these higher frequencies of thought and consciousness, we are guided to make choices that resonate with our authentic self in a way that we wouldn't necessarily if we were trying to mentally figure it out. When we open up to what Spirit is wanting to move through us as, then we open ourselves up to a greater expression. This practice enables us to co-create lives and environments and projects with a way that is so aligned with love, with abundance, with success. It allows us to open ourselves up to a greater experience of that. So would you like to experience a little visioning today? All right, well, you have some papers in your hands with little clipboards and pencils, and I'm going to invite up one of our beloved practitioners, Kelli Marshall, to lead you through some visioning. Can you do the slides, or you want me to stay up here and do them?
If we can move it over.
I will move it over, yeah. I can move it over.
All right.
This, right here.
Okay. All right. Well, what a wonderful introduction to visioning for those of you who are new to it. And it is my pleasure today to bring this exercise to our community. As typically done when we're starting out on a meditative journey together, we're going to just go into the quiet. Taking a few moments to just relax into the space in preparation for receptiveness, vision, gratitude, and any other message that shows up for us today. I invite you to take a deep cleansing breath, releasing it and allowing yourself to just be still. Imagine a beautiful light surrounding you. It's inviting, calming. This light does not exist outside of you, but moves through and from you. I will now begin with a series of questions. Pausing after each, when ready, simply write your answer. What is Spirit's highest idea for my life? What is Spirit's highest idea for my life? What do I need to embrace or embody for this vision to be fulfilled? What must I embrace or embody for this vision to be fulfilled? What must I release or let go of to fulfill this vision? What must I release or let go of to fulfill this vision? Is there anything else for me to know? Is there anything else for me to know? I invite you to return to the breath for a moment. It's now time to write your statement. In alignment with the highest idea for my life, I release and I embrace. In alignment with the highest idea for my life, I release and I embrace. I invite you to take a moment to silently give thanks for the insights and guidance that you've received today. Thank you. Reverend Laura?
That was wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so visioning's great. This is from Ernest again. Work without vision is drudgery, but vision without work is self-deception. So what's the work of visioning? Many of you probably heard the story of the man who's in a flood. And his house is flooding, the waters are rising, and somebody comes and knocks at the door and says, "Come on out, I'll help you get out of here." And the man says, no, God will help me. I don't need your help, thank you. And a little while later, the waters are still rising, and he's in the top floor, and he's out of a window, and a boat comes by with a person in it, and the person says, "Hey, come on, I'll help you. Come on, get in the boat with me, I'll save you." And the man says, no, I'm waiting for God to do it. And finally, the water keeps rising, and the man has climbed to the roof of his house, and a helicopter drops a ladder down, and they holler out on the bullhorn, "Climb up the ladder, we'll save you." And the man says, no, Spirit's got it. I don't have to have you help me. And the man he dies and gets to heaven, and he goes to God and he says, "What's with you? I was praying the whole time for you to help me." And God looks at him and says, "I came 3 times. Oftentimes we don't recognize it. And so part of the work of visioning is learning how to recognize it. If we go back to that idea of the creative process and that the perfect idea is already formed in the mind of spirit, we don't have to do anything to add to that. But we have to be receptive to when it shows up. We have to be available for it to work through us when it shows up. So that's one part of the work of visioning. The second part is that last statement that you wrote on your paper. We don't need to change that high idea of our vision. We have to change ourselves to be the vessel through which it can best show up. And we do that with those 2 statements. I release. If the vision is perfectly formed in the mind of God already, I don't have to add anything to it. But as Michael Beckwith says in many of his books, 100% of spiritual growth is about letting go. We have to let go of those things that are blocking it. We have to let go of old ideas. We have to let go of habits. We have to let go of limited thinking. We have to let go of those things, the fears, the doubts, the lack, the limitation. When we were doing our vision core when we first started it back in 2010, those words, fear, lack, and limitation, came through so often, we started abbreviating it FLL. And then you know what happened? It started coming through as FLL. We didn't hear the words fear, lack, and limitation. We heard FLL. Letting go of those things that are stopping us from experiencing the highest and greatest good for our lives. And then sometimes we have to change a little bit. We have to embody some new ideas. We have to embrace a way of being. We have to shift some of our limited thinking around so that we are more receptive to it. It's not about what Spirit's doing. It's about what are we willing to have happen in our lives. And that's what visioning is about. And so we're going to take our spiritual mind treatment that we do at the end of every service, and we're going to add your work, your visioning work to that. And so I'm going to take us into our spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. And so it has 5 steps to it. The first step is that we recognize the presence of God, we recognize the presence of that universal intelligence. We talk about it. We say, how big can we make our God? And that's what we do in that first step. The second step is called unification, and that's about aligning ourselves with it, knowing that we are one with that divine presence, and all the Spirit is resides within us. Then the third step is what we call realization, and that's where we talk spiritual truth about the situation. And in that stage, I'm going to invite you to, out loud, say your release and embrace statement. And you'll just do it by saying, I release whatever you wrote down, and I embrace whatever you wrote down. And then we'll finish out the prayer with our 4th stage, which is thanksgiving, and the 5th stage, which is release. Because if it's already all done, we just got to let it go, just like the release statement that we're doing for ourselves. Are you ready to try? Practitioners, you want to stand and surround us, holding us in consciousness throughout all of our time? Thank you. Our spiritual practitioners are amazing people. They spend at least 4 years in study, learning spiritual principles and spiritual truth. All right. So I invite you to just settle into your seat. Close your eyes and drop your shoulders. Have your paper near you so that you can see it if you can't remember the words. And just listen for my cue as to when to read your I release and I embrace statement. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one power, one presence, one divine creative source of all. That one goes by many names and shows up in infinite incarnations. But in this moment, I simply know it is God. And I know that God truly is all there is. That the oneness of the universe resides right at the heart of my being. It has created me in its image and likeness, endowed me with perfection and wholeness, with love and abundance, instilled in me all that I need to know, that the infinite wisdom runs through my veins, shows up as me right here and right now. And as I know this is true for me, I know this is true for everyone, for we are all that perfect, unique emanation of a love so powerful, all it could do was create more of itself. And how magnificently it created each one of us. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word right here and right now. I know that this power and presence has moved through each one of us in our time together. It has shown up perfectly as each one of us needed it to today. And it continues to do so with grace and ease. And so I know that as we claim these statements of release and embrace, that it happens in our lives right then. There is a perfection moving through us. And so right here and right now, in this moment, I invite each one of you to claim, I release, and say it out loud. And I embrace. Oh, how good it is to feel this, to feel that wave of energy, of release and embodiment and embracing and love and intelligence moving through each one of us. How good it is to know that it is operating in the life of this community and each one of us individually right here and right now. I just give great thanks for knowing this. I'm so grateful to see it, to feel it, and to know it is happening. And so I release this word into the law, into that creative mind that always says yes. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.